What's up guys, my name is Ace, and now that we have ranked play here for Modern Warfare 2, I've got a ton of people asking me for optimized ranked play loadouts, so that's what we're going to be covering today. Keeping in mind, I'm mainly going to be focusing on loadouts that also follow GAs or gentlemen's agreements that pros have, and therefore just be aware I'm not sharing any tuning in this video. These are just going to be the base setups. If you want to tune these base setups to better fit your playstyle, by all means go for it. However, there is also one exception I wanted to point out. A very common gun that's being used in ranked play right now is the Hemlock. And I believe this is not going to be allowed in professional play. I don't really keep up with the scene too heavily, but I'm still going to be sharing some loadouts for that, since I know a lot of people want to use the Hemlock in ranked and they'd like some setups to get them on the right track. But before we get into the assault rifles, let's have a look at the Vaznev setup. This is still the top SMG for ranked play, although the Lockman sub is still not a bad choice. It's just with attachments, technically the Vaznev is a little bit better. And with this, there's 3 separate loadouts I wanted to share and compare directly with you guys. Keeping in mind, I did do a bunch of extra testing behind the scenes that I'm not going to be showing you because they were just suboptimal loadouts. And the first loadout I'm going to share here is quite a basic loadout, but this is if you're really trying to go heavy in the direction of an SMG, so it's maximizing your aim down sight speed and mobility and everything, while sacrificing pretty considerably in the recoil department. And with this, we're going to be using the Atrazat stock, the TAQ grip, and the FSS Sharkfin 90. These 3 attachments will be present on all of the Vaznev loadouts I share. These are just the basics that you should definitely be using in ranked play. And if you're just running these 3 and nothing else, we do get pretty sporadic recoil, so obviously you're not going to be challenging assault rifles at mid to longer ranges very effectively. This is really just designed for getting right up close and personal. And with this, our aim down sight time is just over 200 milliseconds, which is really fast and snappy. Our sprint out time is also incredibly fast at 94 milliseconds. Our sprint speed is great at 6.1 meters per second, and our aim walking movement speed is also excellent at just under 3.6 meters per second. So for maximum aggression, this is actually what I'd recommend, something really basic and simple like this. However, if you want something with a bit more versatility, you're probably going to want to put a muzzle attachment on here so that you can actually challenge people at mid to longer ranges because the recoil is now manageable. And with this, I was doing some research and it seems like there's a pretty big debate between the Bruin Cubic Comp and the Lockshot KT85 muzzle. And therefore, I just wanted to show you guys the side-by-side comparison here, again, with those same base attachments from the first setup. And as you can see, statistically, everything is identical. Our aim down sight time on both of these is 244 milliseconds, which is 40 milliseconds slower than the first build. So that is going to limit you a little bit in the aggression department, but you're still going to be faster than any one of the assault rifle setups. And when it comes to the best recoil between these two, it's pretty obvious the Bruin Cubic Comp is the way to go. And as a result, for my more all-arounder Vaznev setup for ranked, I'm going to go with that middle setup with the Bruin Cubic Comp. So there we go, those are a couple great choices for the Vaznev setup. It really just depends on how aggressive you want to be versus how versatile you want to be with that. Now let's move on to the TAQ-56, and when it comes to this gun, there is a lot more room for playing around with certain attachments. I am going to be sharing 3 separate loadouts and comparing them side by side, but keep in mind, you can even branch outside of these and still have a very solid setup for ranked play that maybe even suits your playstyle a little bit better. Having said that, I am going to be sharing the 3 main ones that rose to the top with all of my testing of a wide variety of combinations. And when it comes to this, there are 3 must-have attachments on the TAQ-56 for ranked play. These are the 17.5-inch Tundra Pro barrel, the 5.56 high-velocity ammo, and the demo clean shot grip. These are going to be on every single one of my TAQ-56 loadouts. And from there, we're just going to be playing around with the stock attachment as well as the muzzle or underbarrel attachment. And the first one I've got is much more geared toward accuracy over handling. So this is much more for the players that are going to be hanging back, locking down lanes and angles, perhaps playing anchor on a hard point, for instance. And basically anybody that gets into their pre-aimed line of sight will just get insta-melted with this because it is very accurate. And with this, the additional attachments on top of those base ones are going to be the TV Cardinal stock and the FTAC Castle Comp muzzle. This combination seemed to work best if I was going for a muzzle/stock combination. And with this, we have a very accurate setup here, especially with those initial shots fired. There is very little recoil. It kicks basically just straight upwards, super easy to manage. Our aim down sight time is unfortunately the slowest out of all of them that I'm going to share today at 339 milliseconds. But again, this is designed primarily for accuracy over mobility and handling. Our sprint out time is great at 179 milliseconds. Our sprint speed is also very impressive for an assault rifle at just under 6 meters per second. And our aim walking movement speed isn't that important with a setup like this because it's not really going to change the outcome of gunfights that often, but this is 2.77 meters per second. So that's one option if you're really looking at just locking down lanes and pre-aiming a lot. However, if we want a bit more versatility so you can be a bit more aggressive and maybe playing the objective while still playing an AR role, this is where we got the second setup. And with this one, we once again have that cardinal stock, but instead of a muzzle attachment, we're going to be swapping that out for the Shark Fin 90 underbarrel. And the reason behind that is it doesn't hurt our aim down sight time at all. So now our new aim down sight time with this setup is just under 300 milliseconds, which is really solid for an assault rifle. Whereas all of our other stats are identical to the previous one, and honestly, we still get a very accurate and easy to control gun here. It's just worth noting you might get a little more of a horizontal jump after the first or second shot fired, and that is something that could throw you off at longer ranges, whereas with the previous setup, you don't run into that as often. So as an all-arounder with a bit more versatility, this is the direction I like to lean. However, I did want to point out some people like using a different stock combined with the FSS Shark Fin, and therefore we're going to have a look at what this looks like with the TVX-Line Pro stock. And with this, we get a very slight improvement over the previous build to our aim down sight time at 292 milliseconds. Honestly, you're probably not going to be able to feel a 7 millisecond difference between those though. And unfortunately, when you use this stock, we also lose a little bit of that sprint speed and a little bit of our aim walking movement speed. And to top all of that off, it's also slightly less accurate overall based on my testing here. And as a result, I personally don't like using that TVX-Line Pro stock, but I do know some people like it, and I wanted to at least throw it in here for comparison's sake, and maybe that'll even change a few people's minds that use that stock over the Cardinal stock. Overall though, those are the 3 TAQ-56 loadouts that rose to the top for me based on my testing. I personally lean toward that middle build, that's the one I'll use most often. And now let's move on to the ISO Hemlock, which again, I just want to reiterate, this is not likely to be available for pro play. And if you're playing in higher divisions, you may actually get some people that are upset with you if you end up using this gun, because many of those people want to play the exact same game that the pro players are playing. Now, before we get into the loadouts for this, I just wanted to point out why the Hemlock is so good in relation to the TAQ-56. I don't think it's universally better in all situations. I still think there's a great argument for the TAQ-56 being a better gun to use for competitive play. But if we look at a range comparison with all of the ranked weapons, keep in mind I do have the 17.5-inch Tundra barrel combined with the TAQ-56 just because that's always going to be on a competitive loadout. When we look at this, well, the ISO Hemlock's 3-shot kill range isn't as good as the TAQ-56, and its time to kill is also very slightly slower, only by 8 milliseconds, so it's hardly noticeable. The big thing with the ISO Hemlock is in the maximum damage range, you only need 2 out of your 3 shots to hit anywhere in the torso, whereas with the TAQ-56, you have to hit all 3 shots to the upper torso, which is a significantly smaller hitbox, in order to get that 3-shot kill potential. Either that or you have to mix a headshot in to compensate for any lower torso or limb shots that you hit. And therefore, while the potential is better, it's going to be a lot less consistent. It's not very forgiving if you shoot somebody in the stomach. Whereas with the ISO Hemlock, it doesn't matter. You shoot them anywhere, and therefore the consistency is going to be better. And therefore, that's why I think we do see a lot of people using the Hemlock, and also one of the reasons that it's probably not going to be allowed in pro play is it would just throw the meta off a little too much. So keep that in mind, but if you do want to use the ISO Hemlock, here are a few options I've got for you guys. And honestly, it's basically the same loadout. I just wanted to show a comparison between different muzzle attachments. But the base attachments that are universal for my Hemlock loadouts from now on are going to be high velocity rounds, the Slimline Pro optic, the X10 rear grip, and the FSS Shark Fin underbarrel grip. Now from there, I wanted to show 3 different styles of muzzles and how they impact our recoil. The first one is going to be the Komodo Heavy, then we have the Castle Comp, and then after that we have the Second Tread 40. And with this, aside from recoil, all of our other stats are identical. So our aim down sight speed with all of these loadouts is 300 milliseconds. Sprint out time is 179 milliseconds. Sprint speed is 5.82 meters per second, and aim down sight movement speed is 2.58 meters per second. It's worth noting that mobility is a bit slower than the TAQ-56 builds that I was just sharing. And when it comes to the recoil with all of these, honestly, even though statistically you'd think the Komodo Heavy would probably be best because you're trying to get that horizontal recoil under control, in my actual experience and testing with the game, the Second Tread 40 is just giving better results across the board for me, and therefore that's the build that I will tend to lean toward with the ISO Hemlock. If you want to try a different one of the muzzles, that's totally fine, because no matter which way you go, you're going to get a more accurate build than the TAQ-56, and also you're going to get that additional consistency with a 3-shot kill. Again, just be aware, if you use the Hemlock, you may get some people that are upset with you, but at the end of the day, it is allowed in ranked play, at least currently, and therefore I know many people are going to want to use it. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's video on the top ranked loadouts that have been optimized after quite a bit of testing in the background. Again, just want to be really clear here, if there is a different attachment that works better for you, or there's certain tuning values that work great for you, by all means, go in that direction, use what works for you. But these builds here should at the very least give you a really good start for your competitive loadouts. And with that, this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in the comment section below. First off, I'm curious to hear what you guys are thinking about ranked play so far in Modern Warfare 2. And second, do any of your builds differ significantly from the builds that I shared today? And if so, please let me know what that build is. I'd love to hear it. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.